Hello and welcome to this series of videos. The goal here is to set up a web service called a VAMDC data node, which understands the VAMDC query language and answers with data from a database in the exams format. If you don't know what these terms mean, you should probably read more about the VAMDC first, because this series of videos will not be helpful for you otherwise. So this will only help you if you have already decided that you need a VAMDC data node by yourself. So this is not for users, this is for data providers. More information you can find at vamdc.eu, and this tutorial session is also available as audio-free screencast recordings where you can copy and paste from them as well. So the rest of those videos will be recorded playbacks of those already recorded screencast sessions. So if you prefer to watch them in that format, please go to tutorial.vamdc.eu and watch them there instead. So the goal, as I said, is to set up a data node, which is basically a database that holds the raw data, and a web server on top of that that uses the node software to understand the queries and to provide the output format. So in more detail, if you look on the right-hand side first, if a query comes in, the running node, which is this violet box here, first of all has to parse it and then run it on the database. And then the output needs to be assembled and the reply sent back to the user. We use mostly widespread open source software to achieve this. So the underlying stack of softwares is Python and the web framework called Django, which uses the database, which can be any database that is provided by Django, it is supported by Django. For example, the common MySQL or Postgres or Oracle or SQLite, whatever you prefer. And then this needs to be run within some kind of web server, for example Apache if you have already running it, but we will in this tutorial session then use Nginx and a simple web server to run all this. So from the VAMDC side, what we provide is the node software that does already implement all the parts that are the same for all data nodes. But there are some parts that are specific to each data node. For example, the internal layout of the database that is dependent on what kind of data there is. So we need to tell the node software what all the tables in the database mean and how they are connected, which we will do by writing the data model. This data model, either if you have already a database, you can automatically derive this from the database, but you can also, if you start from scratch and don't have a database yet, you start by the data model, which can then create the database for you. We'll go into detail in one of the tutorials about this. Then to understand the queries, there is a dictionary in VAMDC that holds that lists a whole number of keywords that represent certain types of data. So those are the same for all data nodes, which means that a user or application does not need to know anything about the internals of a database. But in order to connect those global names of quantities, so to say, to your database, we need to make this connection simply, which we call the dictionaries in the node software. We'll go into that as well. And then we'll have to tell the node software how to query your database. That depends a little bit on what kind of data you have and how your internal database layout looks like. So there are for data models that match quite good already the exams data format that we want to achieve, this query function will be quite easy to write. If you have a pre-existing database that does not very much correspond to what we want to achieve, the query strategy of this function that needs to be written might become a little bit more complicated, but we will assist you in that if you run into problems. And then, of course, the database itself. Either you have it already, or you need to ingest your data into it, which we'll also cover shortly in one of the tutorials. So without further ado, continue watching if you want to know the details on how to do it in practice, and then you'll hear me in the next video tutorial.